Welcome to our live stream. Before we get started, let's do a quick TV settings check down on this countdown. Beginning with the S95D, everything will be in accurate mode to start. Filmmaker, right? Static tone mapping, making sure that the energy saving is off, none of that pixel shifting or logo dimming is in effect. And we go to the G4 now, same thing, Filmmaker mode, and of course checking for energy saver and all that craziness with the logo dimming, all of that is off all the AI Pro processing, although I will be leaving cinematic motion on just to test. Next up is the G3, same thing, making sure we're in accurate Filmmaker mode, and of course all the power saving features are off, and checking the firmware update, making sure that's current. Oh yeah, I need to check the firmware updates for the other TVs too, right? So Sony, checking that firmware update as well. Yep, looking good. As that's waiting, we'll check the firmware update on the S95D. Yep, they are current. Although I will be putting all these TVs in the most accurate Filmmaker mode to start, we will have fun with the various picture settings throughout this live stream. And also let's check the motion on the Sony, making sure that's what I want it to be. And the G4 firmware update is current. All right, yep. I think we're done. Let's get started. 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Okay, what is this image? I wanted to show you guys this image because this is what the TV sees. This is the reflection from the point of view of the TV, Brian. Because last time I did this reflection glare test, we had direct sunlight. Today, we have lights above. So there are two lights that the Samsung sees and the Sony, so the two TVs on top. So let me show you what TVs we have. This is the position of the TVs, right? Right here. And all right, so we have
A95L point of view is what you're giving us?
Yes.
Hi, Dave.
And it's time to throw in the TVs real quick here. And
C4 highly recommended Alero.
Okay, so you guys see the lights now? So based on that, let me take on the welcome. Okay, so on the Sony, and I wanted to show you guys the differences, right? So the TVs are off, and the Sony on the right, you see I have the light above, right? If you remember, I'll show you my light again. Okay, well, so that blue light.
Why don't we do a proper introduction? Let's do a proper introduction.
I keep on forgetting.
Everyone.
Does everyone knows Brian's Tech Therapy? I'm sorry. Okay, let's do the introduction. Brian, go for it.
I'm Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy. I am here with special guest on his own channel, Stop the FOMO, who was on vacation last week. He's just popping back. He's just popping back like he was here yesterday. So let's give FOMO a little love. Give him a like. There's a lot of you guys in the chat already, 230 of us. FOMO, now you can tell us what we're going to see in this video. Yes. My boy just jumps right in.
I'm just so excited.
He just jumps right in. You're like, you know what you're seeing? You're seeing my TVs. Let's go. That's it.
Okay. I'm so excited. Right. Okay. And yes, I have blackout curtains. I had to open them. So what you guys are seeing, right? That blue light that's on the Sony right there is it's quite, actually it's pretty bright, but on the Samsung, that same light on the ceiling is visible, but it's much more muted on the Samsung, right? So you guys can see it. Whoops, wrong one. Here we go. There you go. See that blue light in the blue ceiling, right? So that can be seen on the Sony right there, if you guys can see that. And so this is the context. Now, the G4 and the G3, their anti-glare gloss is nearly identical to the Sony. So the 3 points of light on the Sony, so we use the Sony as a proxy, right? Whatever you're seeing on the Sony, the G4 and the G3 will have very similar anti-glare coating. More glossy than semi-gloss. So on the very top is a ceiling light, and then in the middle is my other ceiling light, and below that is my LED light that's pointing at my camera, which you guys can see right there, right? That LED light that's above my monitor. And so now there's some context. Okay, so let's put some content on. We will have content with the lights off as well, but I wanted to show you guys what it looks like the TV's off first. And I'll change the exposure, but this is pretty much the brightness of the room, right? This is what you guys are going to see. And so the question is it annoying to you guys with the TVs off? And on this, so let's talk about the Samsung S95D. As you can see, that light kind of diffuses all the way to the left, right? And so let's try some basic content right here.
It's got a different coating, Lise.
Brian, what are your thoughts on the anti-glare? Because I know you had thoughts on the anti-glare. I'll put it on a 5%.
Well, for context, I absolutely hated it when we saw it at CES. We did a whole video on it. But Fomo and I also saw it not on the floor with everybody else. Me, you, and I believe Brandon and a few others saw it with Florian from Samsung. We saw a behind the scenes, and we saw it get beat by WRGB OLED. It was kind of raised blacks. But then I didn't see that at Samsung headquarters, and I didn't see that at Value Electronics. So my thoughts have changed a little bit on it. I don't love it, but it does the job it's supposed to do. As you can see, the reflections on the A95L, they are completely swallowed up by the S95D. So lights, things of that nature, it does the job. I think we just thought it was going to be something we could bring out to the beach and grill on it. What's up, Mrs. Cosmo?
Hey, Mrs. Cosmo. Hey, Cosmo. So as you can see in a brighter white, right? So I have it at, I think, let's go to 50% bright white, and you guys will see on the Sony, right? That little point of light is still visible, but if you go slightly whiter, then you'll see that it does. Yeah, it removes the reflection completely at a certain brightness level. So it doesn't matter what TV you have. The issue really is when you go into the darker scenes. So I'll go back down. There you go. So it starts to appear as the scenes get darker and darker. There you go, right? So now
Fomo, that reflection so that reflection from that top light and that other light in the left-hand corner of the A95L, that's also hitting the S95D.
Yes, identical. I made sure. I mean, it's impossible to see. That's why it's like I had it so that they are literally split, but you can see on the very top of the S95D, there's still that little bit of light. So if I go all the way down to 0, right, you can see it, right? And the S95D has an extra point of light on top that the A95L doesn't have. So I'm going to put up.
And the G4
you see that
has
the extra light on the right? That's the what the S95C will see.
Okay.
So
the G4 has pretty good reflection handling as well. It does have.
Oh yeah, no, the G4, the G3, and the A95L nearly identical. So I'm using the A95L as a representative for the other two TVs because I double checked everything. I'm like, you know what? Other than the Sony having that QD OLED gray, which everyone complains about, the G4 actually looks even darker than the G3 in this case, right? I mean, here you have the G3, and I think it's because, well, you know what? It could be because the G3 has lifted blacks.
Well, the G4 actually has a different
but the G4 sucks up that light. Yeah, the G4 looks darker, and the G3 is
LG said there is a better coating on it, so it should be a different coating than the G3.
Yeah. So now let's check for questions. I wonder if this satisfies people's curiosity about real world in a house where you don't have the windows open. Because having the windows open with direct sunlight was a nightmare for the S95C.
Well, we should also say, guys, right now with 300 of you in the chat or 295, what's your temperature on the S95D? Where are you guys with it? Because a lot of the comments when we reported on at CES where many of you hated it, some of you are looking forward to it. With the coverage from all of us, where are you? So let me ask you guys. I don't see a lot of questions in the chat. What's your temperature on the S95D's finish? I mean, obviously, we know Fomo, you can't bring it outside, and you can't put a spotlight on it, but trash. Let's see.
So clearly,
that was awesome.
All right. And
no caps. Just type that out as fast as you could. Get the party started. Oh, that was awesome.
And See, I keep on forgetting to label these things. Anti-glare. That's what we're talking about. So we're still talking about anti-glare. Before we move on from anti-glare, we're going to go to skin tones next. But I wanted to make sure we put a lot of this to bed as far as, is it watchable, is it unwatchable? It's pretty watchable to me. And we'll leave the lights on for some of the skin tone tests you guys can see. And I will play with the exposure so you guys can see, oh, exposure up or down, is there a big difference? And I do have an ambient light in the back so you guys can see how much I'm overexposing or underexposing so that you guys can capture the tenor of all of this, right? So if let's say max out the exposure so you guys can see, right? You could really see the light, but that's overdoing it on the Sony. This is actually, I think, more of what I see right here. There we go. Okay. Brian, what do you think about the anti-glare? Could you live with this?
I could actually. I mean, I'm at the point. My last video, I compared the A95L 77-inch to the S95D. I liked it quite a bit. The G4 was my pick earlier in the year for best TV of the year, and that hasn't changed. I still would like to get the G4 at 83 because I'm in the heavyweight division. If the S95D did have an 83-inch FOMO, I would need to see that comparison to actually make a decision. So for me,
which comparison, Brian? Which comparison?
I would need to see, because I'm in the heavyweight division. It's easy for me to say I'm all set with it. But I would tell you, after spending time with it versus the A95L, a lot more headroom as far as the peak brightness. Guys have to remember, this is a Generation 3 QD OLED. It is much different than last year's. There is more headroom. It is a good deal brighter. When we're out of these Filmmaker mode presets, it can do more. Seeing it compare to the A95L, I'm much more interested in it. If there was an 83-inch version, I would definitely need to see it compared to the 83-inch G4 for me to make a decision. Where it was a clear no bueno when I was at CES. Like, don't even talk to me about it. But seeing what it can do, and that's why I think it's so important, guys. Why I think FOMO is so good at this, step by step, is it's not just what you hear in one thing and what you read in one thing. You guys really need to spend some time with these things to really before you discard them. You're saying it's trash. I understand.
Before
I'm not going to convince you otherwise.
Before we get to the image quality, so I think Seconds 84 has a good point that we both want to address. Macro shots, that means close-ups of the pixel, that the S95D had blurry looking pixels, almost frozen, and the A95L S90 is tack sharp. So this is something that you guys have to consider. If you do a close-up on those, there is no doubt they are fuzzy and blurry because of the matte screen. But from a distance, honestly, I cannot see the G3 or the G4 or the A95L being sharper from this distance. So there is no doubt close up, it is a little bit soft. It's like watching an 83-inch OLED, right? From 3 feet away. The 83-inch OLED, you can see the pixel 4K. It's just a lower pixel pitch compared to a 42-inch 4K OLED. I mean, but they're both 4K, but 3 feet away from an 83-inch, it will be fuzzier. However, you stand far enough away, it doesn't matter. And in this case, from this distance, which is about 12 feet away, not a problem. As a matter of fact, I could probably get 6 feet away, which is what I normally, on a 65-inch TV, I'm normally 6 feet away from the TVs. I did not see a difference in sharpness. So gotta have some context, guys, because oftentimes we're so caught up in the minutia of the macro close-ups that I agree, if you're sitting 12 inches away, maybe that's an issue, right? So maybe a matte screen on a 27-inch monitor may not be the way to go, but on a TV, I think it's okay, especially the S95D. What are your thoughts on the macro shots? Is it overstating, or do you see a softness, Brian?
I mean, I would only see a softness like you're saying. And we saw that when you looked at the stars, which everyone either wants or doesn't want to hear, is the only time I saw it look softer is right up on it. Like jeweler glass, nose to the screen. If that's the way you watch TV, then that has some validity. I'd be more focused on the contrast ratio and the peak brightness that the third gen offers. So I wouldn't be quite as concerned with that. I don't care how text looks, even though it's improved over the S95C this year. I don't get caught up in it that close. I really don't. So to me, it's overall how it looks. And that's where seeing the forest from the trees is very important. How does it look in movies, in gaming? from a reasonable seating difference. Guys, I sit 5 feet from an 83-inch, 6 feet a game. So that's where, I'm discussing that realistic watching. If you want to take a jeweler's glass and go right up to it, I'm sure it probably would have an issue, but it doesn't concern me at all.
Okay, I agree. I just adjust the exposure to make sure it kind of matched what I saw.
I mean,
And
but
this is
Samsung,
closer to the exposure that I'm seeing. Go ahead.
real quick, Samsung, none of this changes Samsung's reliability issues or the dropouts from last year. So it's not like all smooth sailing, no questions asked. They still, last year, the S95C's dropouts are a real thing. So, that's not as like, yeah, go out and buy it. You still have to be careful with Samsung.
Samantha has a great question, trying to get me to break my embargo. Hi guys, do you think Sony will reveal a new Z Master Series TV next week? I can tell you this, and we've been consistent with this opinion for a while. My opinion is no, I don't think so. However, Brian may disagree. Brian, what are your thoughts about a new Z Master Series, meaning an 8K?
Hell yeah, they're doing a new one. They're doing 5 of them.
There you go.
They're doing a Battlestar Galactica Z976Z. I don't know. I don't know. All right.
And here is
Eddie, what's up, Eddie?
Man watching S95D dark content in daylight. No bueno. Yeah, if it's gray like this, you're going to see a few reflections. The question is, which is more distracting? And let's put some real content right now. So I think we've had enough of these non-patterns.
The S95B and the S95C were unwatchable in sunlight as well. So I know that we're upset about it, but the fact is it was unwatchable in sunlight with the S95C. I did videos on it. The problem is we thought the matte screen was going to change that. And actually, it's only really good at getting rid of the lamps in your room. So in a real seating environment, when you're watching movies, like you're seeing with that light in Fomo's background, that's what it's for. We thought it was like the end-all, be-all. You wouldn't be able to shine a light on it or anything, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Boss Enemy, yes, 144 hertz is very important because that's a big reason why I would choose the G4. I use every frames per second. So having those dropouts is a massive, massive deal. Cosmo, what's up, baby? Cosmo's been quiet.
Yeah, Cosmo, Mrs. Cosmo's here today. A lot of the regulars are here. I'm so happy to see them all.
Cosmo's comeback stream. Shout out to Cosmo and Mrs. Cosmo. How is everybody doing?
Okay, so now this is
we'll sleep on the 900D.
Content.
Oh, my girlfriends are up.
And let me turn down exposure a touch. There we go. Okay. And no, the reflections do not appear to affect the image quality of the S95D, the anti-glare coating. It looks fine from here. So now we're still in a bright lit environment. And I wanted to show you that the G4 and the S95D out of the box, the G3 is calibrated. So you guys can compare for yourself to see, hey, how does this look? Compared to a calibrated G3, and the skin tones, I think, they look pretty good. I guess it's, let me look here.
G4 looks a little brighter, and the G3 look brighter, actually.
Yeah, and it is SDR, so I try to match the brightness. The G, it's very close. Other than brightness, the skin tones are like, you wouldn't be able to walk from one room to the next and say, oh, this is more accurate. I think the G4 may need a touch more red, just a touch, because the lady in the bottom left-hand corner could be a little bit tanner, but come on, right? This is, all of them are out of the box with no calibration except for the G3. The G3 was, see, I forgot to change this. We're on skin tones now. I'm going to get better at these labels, right? So, skin tones. So any questions
I'm not drinking,
about
Ron
that?
Clark. Brian is drinking.
And we're starting with all the TVs are in Filmmaker mode. Yeah. Okay. Is Brian drinking again?
That's why you don't get. You know what? That's why you don't get those live streams anymore. Comments like that. I do feel like these are my girlfriends. I didn't know them. How many times have we hung out with them? What's up, John?
And of course, Lisa loves the A95L. So this goes to the point where in most content, they look very similar, right? So I just wanted to get this out so you guys can see, and I'll change the exposure a little bit more so you guys can see maybe more of the skin tones, of the darker skin tones.
What preset are we in?
They're all in Filmmaker mode. They're most accurate modes out of the box. Ooh, let me go the other way. I think I went too dark.
We're in the crappiest mode.
Pretty much.
We're in the most accurate lifeless mode, everyone.
Right. This is the accurate lifeless mode. I wanted to turn up the exposure so you can see the darker skins, right? Because you have to expose to skin color as well. I was exposing to the lighter skin, now exposing to the darker skin. But I think it's safe to say that the G4 and the S95D out of the box are no worse than the Sony A95L out of the box. The only TV here that's calibrated is the G3, and I think the skin tones are pretty much close enough that you're like, you know what? You get a premium TV, boom, Filmmaker mode, you're there.
FOMO, you're missing a tag on the G4, my friend.
Ah, there you go. See? Where would I be without you guys?
My man is. That wasn't me.
You're
it was who put it in there? Stan Cartman Kenny.
And there is that. Here we go. Oops. See, slight. Someone mentioned this. Oh, here we go. The slight green push.
You're talking about the. Was he talking about
very
the TVs
slight.
or the girls in the screen? He's like, fourth on the left, fire. I'm like, oh, wait, but there's 5 TVs there.
Get me in trouble. Okay.
Fourth from the left and fifth from the bottom. I'm like,
now we're going to go into some bright content. And in bright content, this room light is not going to be a big deal at all. It's when we go to the darker content, you guys will see be a problem. Well, maybe not a big problem. Maybe, Brian, I remember your comment where you're like, I'm used to seeing reflections. I don't care. So we're going to hit 10,000 nit content real quick. Actually, you know what? This is 2,000 nit because I want to be realistic. 10,000 nit doesn't exist, but 2,000 nit does. So this is, let's go to 2,000. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
So it's funny. I said that when I was editing my S95D video. I was doing the commentary for that. And while I was doing that, I could see myself in my own A80L recording the content for anti-glare. And I thought, wow, I can actually see myself sitting here. So, and also filming the S95D in Value Electronics, every TV in there was a mirror. But you don't really focus on that because I'm used to it. So having that gone is pretty cool. But as long as the sun doesn't hit it. I don't watch TV in sunlight touching the screen, so I'm not worried about it myself. But I don't love the matte finish. I'm not saying I love it. I'm just saying we got to swing it the other way a little bit. People are ready to put this thing in the bin, and now the S90 is the new champ, and I'm like, no, not yet. It's a better value, but that's about it.
So in 2,000 nit content, they all look very similar. The G3, G4, A95L, S95C, I don't see a huge brightness difference. Let me double check. Yeah, they all look so similar, right? I wouldn't buy it based on specular highlights on this scene. Obviously, we'll have brighter scenes, but sometimes like the cloud scene will be the one that jumps out at you. But Brian, speaking of brightness, are we at a point where you would choose a TV based on brightness anymore? Is it bright enough for you, Brian, or are you still waiting for the brightest?
As far as OLEDs, I think we're good. I mean, I don't need it to get much brighter than that. I'll take that on the mini. Well, I mean, if you get it back into what we were talking about with Sony and 4,000 nit content, I think with mini LEDs, you still need it because of the contrast ratio. With OLEDs, they're bright. They're so inky as far as the blacks. I don't think it's something we need. It's something we're definitely going to get, but I'm happy with the brightness we have, I think, because when I was gaming on the G4, it was blinding. A lot of the specular highlights were definitely blinding. How about for you? Do you feel like you need it? Do you need it more in your mind? Or
no, well, because of Sony's 4,000 nit declaration that that's the future, I need it just so I can test the 4,000 nit content. But that's me as a reviewer. But as you can see in normal content, I don't need it.
You're funny. You're like, because they said it. I need it. I need it. Gotta have it.
You know what's interesting here? The G3 has better tone mapping at 2,000 nits than the G4, but I understand the G4 has the special tone mapping trims that we can play with. But I'm just saying, out of the box, I haven't touched any of that. The G3 is actually pretty solid.
So what I find interesting with the G4, the C4, any of the TVs that I've seen, none of them have taken any updates. Have you seen? Did yours take an update out of the box?
Yes, yeah, immediately.
Oh, you have an update. Okay, all right. Mine
Yeah.
had no update. I was like, okay, we're just raw dog, no update. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I had an update out of the box. I haven't had one since because I updated it maybe 2 days ago, and I checked, like you saw in my countdown, I checked it literally within an hour of starting so I can put together the countdown. Now, the Sony, many of you noticed, the Sony, there is no grass because Sony does not do well tone mapping super bright content, in this case, 2000 nits. It needs to be closer to 1000 nits. And since most content is 1000 nits, this is not going to be an issue for you. But I noticed that on the G3, the grass is actually a little bit darker, a little bit more fuller. So in this case, the G3 wins the 2000 tone. Well, actually, it ties the S95D. G4 is a touch behind, but again, the G4 is not calibrated, so who knows? Maybe if you put it in the right trim, it might do it, but it's out of the box, just like the S95D and the Sony. So nothing's optimized,
Just
but
there's,
just
no
making that
grass.
notice right there.
No grass. It is milky too over there in
Milky.
QD OLED land. Huh? It's milky.
Hey, thanks for the super chat, Sander. I own a 77-inch LG C9. I'm
Oh,
interested in
love
the
seeing it.
Hisense 100-inch U8K, 110-inch UX, 98-inch UX, Samsung 98-inch qned. Would it be a downgrade from an OLED? I'm sitting 12 and a half feet away. Brian,
Yes.
why don't you start? Is it going to be a
Yeah.
downgrade?
Of course.
You think so?
Even the C9 was an absolute beast. C9 was wieldly. It was cartoony. It looked like a Samsung. You're still gonna see a contrast ratio hit. You're gonna get a huge size upgrade. You're really far away. So yeah, I'd say you'd be fine as far as what you're gonna get in experience, image quality. You're still dealing with micro contrast versus mini LED, so you are gonna take a hit
Mm-hmm.
there. Um, Out of that group, you would have to go with the 110 UX for the best image quality. I think it's better than the rest. You clearly have some money, Xander, because those other TVs are like 20 grand. Well, you have a C9 from 77 inch, so you probably paid 15 grand for that. Um, Picture quality wise, you're still going to take a hit. It's still an OLED versus a mini LED. But it sounds like you need it because you're going to be pretty far away. There isn't an OLED that size unless you want to grab. I'll solve it for you right now. If you have the money, LG G4 at 97 inches. There you go. Boom. You're done.
There you go. So
It's delayed though, so you have
what
to
we
wait.
always tell you is you're going from OLED to non-OLED.
I can't do it.
The size, I would do it. I would go with a 110-inch UX because I think going from a 77 to 110 is just the immersion makes up the difference for me. It really does.
Well, and I game though,
So I
so
would do
that's
that.
where the contrast ratio
Hmm.
really takes a hit is in gaming. So if you don't game, it might be different.
Right. Now, just quickly in this scene, it's clear that the G4 is actually a little bit brighter in the whites. And this is what the G4 and the G3 does very well. If it's white, it will be brighter than anything out there. Now the S95D is not necessarily less bright. That pinpoint is matches the G4. It's just everything around it is not as bright. So there's an argument that maybe here, I'm just gonna point it out. Here, the S95D has more subtle tone mapping, but it's bright right there. Whereas on the G4, it's brighter all around, but you still have some detail here. So it feels like maybe the S95D is more subtle right there. I honestly don't know what's right because unless we have a master monitor, who knows? The G3 is not as subtle as the G4. So here the G4 does a better job of bringing me more of the cloud shadow detail. And the Sony actually isn't bad. It adjusted
So
pretty
guys,
well to the scene.
everybody keep in mind we're in filmmaker mode. That's why they look so
We
similar.
are. We are in
If we were
filmmaker
to
mode.
put the G4 and the S95D in a more aggressive preset, they would be a good deal brighter. You're just not seeing that because
Yes.
we're in the most accurate preset. So just keep that in
Uh,
mind while they look the same.
yep.
And the G3 is calibrated. So I mean,
It
there's
is.
going to be a
It
little bit
is.
different.
The G3 is calibrated, which means it may be less bright than it could be. So that's an excellent point, Brian. When you calibrate,
Or
you
it could be
actually pull
brighter.
down that blue. Yes,
It could be nicer.
or
You never know. Hey, for that, someone told me about why don't you overclock the TV? I'm like, overclock the TV. I'm gonna start overclocking them.
you're gonna explode the TV. And here, they all look very similar, right? It's very three-dimensional. Maybe the Sony is probably the least three-dimensional in this scene because 2000 nits is kind of tough for the Sony to hit. But here, and I cannot tell that the S95D has any kind of anti-glare layer. So that's why I'm saying in real content, it isn't really a big deal to me. But for many of you, maybe.
But FOMO, maybe on that, okay. I was going to say on the S95D top right corner where the light is hitting it, does it darken a little bit? Or is the
On the
G4
S,
just brighter in the corner? Is it just the corners? For the G4, it's gone. It's a little darker in the G4 S9. I'm sorry, the S95D's right hand corner where that light
yes,
is.
I see that. Yeah, yeah,
Is that
it's
you think that
possible.
light?
It's possible. So, you bring up another good point. So these TVs have to manage the power. And
Yeah,
Classy mentioned this to me. They will vignette the outer edges to give you more brightness in the center. If a TV evenly makes everything bright, there's not enough energy to do all of that. So every TV has to make a decision. I think the Sony does that. It vignettes the outside, but it's not a problem because how do you get all the energy there? You have European and American energy regulations, and you have the limits of the power board, right? So there might be a little vignetting on some TVs, but then you have more brighter spots in the middle. Is it a trade-off? Yeah. And so there's still some improvements to be had in terms of efficiency, but that's a really good point. You noticed that. I didn't even see that until you mentioned that in this scene.
well, it's a good comment. John Leary just said that's what Brian said is that we'll talk about G4's processing or lack of processing a little bit later in the video, but their greatest strengths are going to be neutralized when they're calibrated in Filmmaker mode. So yeah, if you're expecting
Yeah.
it to pull away, to your point, that's why we do kind of an out of the box also to try and negate that, which is we thought that would hurt the A95L last year. It actually helped it. It actually pushed it across the finish line. But yeah, that's the difference between doing a calibrated shootout versus the one you'll see us do, kind of that M wave where everything is out of the
Out of the
box.
box.
You'll see
Yeah.
you'll see what the TVs can do. In my comparison, the A95L and the S95D, once I was in Filmmaker and movie modes, professional, they looked very, very similar. Actually, the static tone mapping is pretty aggressive on Samsung. Once we were in standard and dynamic and other poppy presets, they were not close. The S95D is a lot brighter, and it doesn't lose the detail it showed in the video because the camera was clipping, not the TV. So they can do more. You won't see that in the shootout though, because we're looking for most accurate. The shootout's
Yeah.
about enthusiasts and purists, right, FOMO?
Yep. And speaking of enthusiasts, I love this scene because you'll notice that the G4 has the brightest sun, but it has the least color in the sun. However, the impact is there. The G3 is second brightest, and Sony and the S95D, Sony is probably the least bright, but it has the most color inside that sun, and the S95D is right in between. So QD OLED, they want to give you most of that orange luminance, whereas the G3 and the G4 are like, look, we can't push our yellows that bright because WOLED, but we'll add a little bit of white, and it makes that scene a little bit brighter. So Brian, let me ask you, is that a trade-off you're willing to take for that HDR impact? Because, let me go back to that scene, because you still get the yellow, right, Brian? Except it's just not as yellow as the Sony, and so there's an argument, well, what about creators' intent? Well, creators intended for this to be bright, so G4 and G3 got that right. It's just they don't have all the color, whereas on the Sony and the Samsung, they got the color, but not bright enough. So I think neither has the creator intent fully delivered in a sense
Probably.
where
Yeah.
can they get it that bright at this level? Maybe not. And that's something that a lot of people, there's no right answer, I think.
Well, what have you and I have always said about quantum dot LEDs, or even just the thoughts of them, is that in a few scenes out of 1,000, that blue or that green or that orange show up. Remember, when we're not comparing these, having them in a vacuum, you won't notice it's not there.
Right.
So I would still go for the brighter, again, specular highlights of the
Yeah.
G series.
So in this case, you would choose the G4 because you have that impact. And I agree with you. I really enjoy that impact.
Yeah,
At least
and why
there's some yellow.
And why I'm saying impact, guys, those of you that are big gamers, I was playing Dead Space, which is, the remaster. FOMO, the lights in the ship and the popping sparks above my head, I literally was, wincing and kind of blinking heavily because I felt that HDR impact. That is what we want. That's why the 4,000 nit TVs, it's that impact of specular highlights. So for me, that is what I am going to pay for. Do I want And I'll say this, and FOMO and I talked about this off camera. The A9G, one of the best OLEDs ever made. Right,
Yeah.
FOMO, very filmic, very beautiful, director's intent, but it didn't have any headroom to make it more aggressive like the C8 or the C9. So meaning you couldn't take it anyplace else. You were kind of stuck with that beautiful image, like a reference monitor. The reference monitor doesn't always look amazing. Well, the new one does, but these other ones don't always. If you have to like that image, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Agreed. And you guys, there's no right answer, by the way. We are definitely pixel peeping here because when you're paying this much for a TV, it's safe to say they're all going to look great. I just wanted, for those who want that last percent, the 99%, they're identical. It's that last percent we're really testing here, and the obvious miscues, right? Like here, the shadow detail looks great on all the TVs. I'll show up the exposure you guys can see. There we go.
I love the Sony
Now,
questions.
you see that turning up the exposure, it overemphasizes the anti-glare on the Samsung, spreading it out. But on the Sony, you also see that light. So, the question is,
Yeah.
which is more bothersome? It doesn't look like it's lifted that much at regular exposure, but obviously it's there.
So we talked about this, guys. When the matte screen was introduced, and we saw it for the first time, as I've mentioned, it wasn't about eliminating the light altogether. It wasn't about blocking the light. It was about losing the reflection. It's called
Yeah.
anti-reflective. So what Foam and I said is a WRGB OLED was a mirror, but it was still as sharp, right, FOMO?
Mm-hmm.
But the S95D, though the light grayed out the screen, you could see the entire image. And that was the trade-off we discussed, was raised blacks, but the light was gone, but you could see the reflections were gone. And that's where I think it still, is doing what it's supposed to. I can't see that light at all, which is pretty amazing if you think that you're watching TV with a bunch of lamps. And I don't know about you, FOMO, but as I get older, I don't always watch TV in a black, completely dark room anymore. I do have lights on
Oh,
occasionally.
not many people have a man cave. I think a man cave is very much a thing of the past. A lot of people have mixed use rooms now because
Yeah,
what is it? I
absolutely.
say no one goes in the man cave except for the man. And it gets lonely.
He's down there by himself, like, Jesus, hello?
it gets lonely sitting in that cave by
It does
yourself,
get,
right?
it's lonely because you can't show it off to anybody. You're like, hey, come
Hello?
downstairs. You're like,
Come
nope.
downstairs and watch with me, right? Like, no, that's okay. Hey, seconds, how's posturization between them? So seconds 84, this is a difficult one to test, kind of, because it really depends on your content. So first, sometimes there's posturization in the content, right? And none of these TVs can fix that. Sometimes the posturization comes because there's not enough bit rate, like it's a low bit rate issue, and so the TVs don't have enough information. And then some TVs do it badly just because they're not doing a good job. And I think that's what you're asking. And the question is, for me to set up the right environment, I'm still working on that. For example, Sony Dolby Vision. I know they're my whipping boy for Dolby Vision, but it appears that Sony Dolby Vision has slightly worse posturization because they're not able to handle low bitrate Dolby Vision as well as other Dolby Vision TVs. And I don't know why that is. I think they're fixing that. But that is unique to Dolby Vision. You put in HDR10, it's fine. And so there's so many variables that to universally say one has better posturization processing than the other, you're really applying to that specific use case. Like in this use case, gaming, perfect example, right, Brian? In gaming, you have the highest quality possible from your GPU. Maybe gaming is the best test of posturization because everything is there for the TV to play with. And if it cannot deposturize in gaming, well, what can it do with real content? So it's
And
just
that's what we,
something that I can't answer to your
yeah.
satisfaction.
Well, and that's what we say about 8K gaming, which I'll have on the 900D in a few days, is it's really the only way to see real 8K resolution. There's no dynamic upscaling in some of these games. It's just 8K. Purely, before we answer Christian, guys, I want you guys to answer me this question. If Dolby Vision is important to you, keep in mind LG has Dolby Vision Filmmaker this year. And Dolby Vision's implementation is best on LG TVs. Is that
Yes.
important to you guys for there to be Dolby Vision? They have, Vivid standard. They have different presets. I think Sony only has Vivid, bright, and dark, right? They still only have those three FOMO on the A95L.
Yes. Vivid.
So
Well, they have
bright,
Vivids. Well, you know what? Let's look at it right now before.
Vivid's not. I don't think Vivid's even Dolby Vision. I think it's just Vivid. It's Dolby
Oh, I
Bright.
don't have Dolby Vision on this. They have Dolby Bright and Dolby Dark. That's about it.
Oh, Dolby, okay, yeah, Dolby Bright. So LG has a better implementation, and I heard Dolby Vision talk, I heard Dolby Vision talk at LG, and that Dolby Vision Filmmaker, is that important to you guys? Does that matter to you? Because we always talk about Dolby Vision, everybody loves it. Now it's also here. The only company to have Dolby Vision Filmmaker mode, is that important to you? That's on all the LGs, by the way. qned as well.
So this is a great scene because it's a real scene.
So Christian?
And I think I set it to the right exposure. So observe, look at the scene, Brian. Tell me if that's distracting as I answer Christian. Hey, Christian, thank you for the super chat. Can't watch today, boys. S95C versus G4. Is it worth waiting a year to get the 83-inch G4, or should I get the 77-inch S95C? Either will be a major
Waiting
upgrade.
a year for it. Get it right now. 83-inch G4
Chris,
is out.
I want Christian to wait and get the 83-inch. Because
But why would you wait a year? Just get it. Oh, he's got to save up for it.
yes. Save up for
You
it.
got to stop with them super chats, baby.
You got to save up with it. Save up for it, my
Get
friend.
that, come on. You put that on layaway, baby. You got that. Get them credit cards out.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I mean, look, 77 is an awesome size, Christian. 83 is epic.
83 is so good. Yeah.
It is epic.
And it's bright 83. And you'll be very happy with that, I believe.
I mean, it's
And okay, and again, those of you looking at this reflection on the Sony, the LGs will have a similar reflection on that glossy screen. So Brian, which is more distracting, right? In this brightness where the Sony actually carves an image around that bright light, whereas the S95D diffuses that light,
so
which is more distracting.
So very interesting. Let's pause for a second. Let's give Fomo some love. Let's give him some likes. We're at 479 of you guys watching.
479.
I wish you guys could know the amount of work that my man puts into setting these TVs up. It is a couple day setup, so please like and subscribe to him. If you're not, keep chatting with us. It's a lot of work. Let's give him some love. FOMO, it is a toss-up. I don't love seeing that light there now that I'm looking at it, but the warmness of the S95, it almost reminds me of a red blooming. So it's bothering me. It's bothering me a little bit, baby.
Also, the Sony has a reflection here. Did you notice the reflection here, Brian?
I did not. Look at FOMO all jacked, just jumping in camera. Do some Pilates, baby.
And so,
yeah, no, I didn't even see
but
that.
It didn't bother you. You see? Well, let me take that out. Let me take out this.
Only because I'm not. I mean, if I was reading that, I think maybe. But again, I'm used to the glare until it's gone. So, yeah, sub to my channel while you guys are at it. Brian's Tech Therapy. If you do not know who I am, I don't say that enough on these streams.
And in case you're wondering, all the reflections that you guys see here on the Sony is also on the Samsung. It's just you cannot see it. That's what the matte screen does. So I think it's subjective. I'm not going to say there's a winner or loser because some people might be more distracted by the actual lights that they're seeing than just the diffuse. So I don't think there's a wrong or right answer. But
what's your take on it, FOMO? I mean, is this something that you would look at and say, hey, you know what?
Okay, my take is the A95L, I'm so used to seeing that seeing the S95D not have it, I think I would prefer to get used to the S95D's slight diffuse, just slight. Heavy diffuse, I don't know, but slight, I think is manageable. I think if Samsung took down that diffusion effect by 10%, and I think they're playing with it, right? If they can take the chemistry down by 10 to 15%, not as aggressive, it's going to be a winner. Because look on the right-hand side, you got 3 different lights. On the Samsung, you only see 1 light, but the other 2 are not even there. So if they take the diffusion or the matte anti-glare down by 15%, I think it would still eliminate the other 2 lights without diffusing the top light, which is the closest and the brightest. And let me see. Okay, so here's the question that I think we will try to test today. Marcos is asking, thank you for the super chat, worth the G4 over the G3? If it's an 83-inch, of course, right? You're
Yes,
getting MOA
yes,
on
it
the
is. It's
83-inch.
worth it.
But
Stop
these
it.
are
Stop it.
65-inch TVs. Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead. I'll let you
Just
answer.
stop.
Not
Stop.
83. What about the smaller sizes?
Yes, it's worth it. This is where it's not worth it. Right off the bat, if you're looking for the best value, it's not worth it. Just flat out, it's not worth it. Now, from what we've been led to believe, with the new processor, it is worth it. The difference, the different UI, Dolby Vision Filmmaker mode, 144 hertz gaming, it is worth it. Now, for the best value, Marcos, it's not worth it because obviously any TV from last year is going to be a better value. The C3, the C2 are better values. But if you're here buying a TV that's going to last you a long time and you have the extra money, the G4 is definitely worth it. I don't care what size you buy. It's a new processor. I'm confident whatever their issues they're having, they're going to sort them out. But it's most definitely worth it. And it's not. If it was just a little bit brighter, I would say forget it, Marcos. But it's a new processor, man. It's
And
only
let's
on the
pause
G4 and the M4.
about the new processor. It's 144 hertz capable. So if Marco is only streaming, it would not be worth it. But you, Brian, are a gamer. You're using the 144. You got your $3,000, $2,000 GPU capable of more than 144. So you want a
Yeah.
TV that supports it, right? So Marco, what are you watching? If it's just Netflix, no.
Well, Marcos, but in theory, if the processor is doing what we're hoping and what it was promised to do, it will be a big difference. We're just not seeing that right now. That's going to be a question for later in the stream, I think.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to go through
It's hard to
some.
recommend last year, guys, unless you're looking for the best value. It just really is. Just the
Yes.
way technology works, it's always a little difficult to recommend last year. We tend to, if you say which is the best value, always go in last year. But to me, the G4 is a jump.
I think these brightness, okay, at 2000 nits, I'm going to have to say that they're too close to call. I wouldn't buy any of these TVs based purely on specular highlights that you're going to see in normal streaming, right? Because 2000 nits is pretty much the ceiling of what you're going to get on streaming, on disc, whatever it is. Short of Spears and Munsell that can go up to 10,000 nits, or some of the Sony demos that will hit 4,000 nits in a few weeks. These images, if this is what you're watching, get yourself the cheapest of this group. The
And if
G3,
you're watching,
A95,
and if
whichever
you're
one it
watching,
is.
and if you watch in Filmmaker mode, that's got to be set. If you're watching in this preset and it's most accurate, they will look the same. Take them out of that mode; they do not look the same. So I'm just saying, you guys, if you're watching, if you want to be in Filmmaker mode, yes, buy the cheapest one. A95L, well, actually, A95L is not the cheapest one.
Wait.
If you're watching them in this preset, grab a C series.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it in this preset, special effects. Let's do that right now. This is an excellent this is an excellent scene to do that, right? Because I want to show off just real quick how the G4 performs outside of that, because I think it's important, like you said. Here we go.
Oh, and someone said that they wanted a TV with Dolby Vision, HDR10 Plus, and then get a Hisense. They have them both. Don't they, FOMO? Hisense has both of them.
Yes, but I wouldn't trust it. I have a rant about that, so let's talk about that right now.
HDR10 Plus, right?
Yeah. So here we have Cinema Home, and I'm just going to compare it so that the G3 is still in Filmmaker mode, so you guys can see the difference of this. But yeah, can you hold that thought? I think it's an important question about Dolby Vision HDR10 Plus and what people want. So dynamic tone mapping. Okay. I'm just giving it some pop. And then on the Samsung, you can get something similar just by turning on active.
Yep.
So one button, you're there as well. Active, give contrast enhancer. It's like, ooh, that's too much. There we go. I think that's good enough. Okay.
So you don't even have, so real quick before you change it, you guys don't even have to look at the two TVs. Look at the A95L versus, now he's in a more aggressive preset, but you see the difference. Difference from one another is one thing, but I'm just trying to show you the differences between the two presets in the sense that Filmmaker is very accurate, but not everybody here watches, and I don't watch that preset. Only time I watch Filmmaker is I'm watching a very old film.
And let's put the
Otherwise,
Sony in its vivid mode. So this is standard, this is vivid. So Sony's vivid is technically the most accurate of the group. So let me try and make vivid. Let's see, color. Let's turn off live color. Color temperatures go warm. There we go. To make it more accurate. There we go. That's my accurate.
Okay. Sin, you can't say you shouldn't buy a TV for 144 hertz if you use it, my friend. If you're a PC gamer, every frame matters, even if it's processing. If you use it, it's hard to say you shouldn't buy it for that reason if that's a feature that's important to you, my friend.
Okay, I think I matched. There you go. Okay, so only the G3 is in the most accurate Filmmaker mode, but this is actually very watchable.
Well, the S95D looks crazy bright.
Yeah. So again,
if you pause it quick, If you pause it quick, here's what I'm trying to say to you guys. Each manufacturer has a signature. At Filmmaker mode and professional mode, that signature disappears. Now you're seeing the signature come back. Even if the S95D is brighter in some spots, the G4 is brighter in some spots. They have a different look outside of Filmmaker. All I'm trying to say to you guys, if you want to see the TVs, their signature, it's not going to be in those most accurate presets.
Oh, here we have a guy who's in a home theater project. Mitchell Martins, thank you for that super chat. Fomo and Brian, trying to set up a home theater room, QM8 85-inch, maximum room distance is 7 feet away. Oh, nice. 9x9 room, movies, gaming. Too close? Actually, that is just there. Perfection. Just right. 98-inch might be too close, but 7 feet from 85-inch, I'm all about that. I think that's perfect.
Goldilocks right there. That's just right.
Yeah, it's short of IMAX, right? IMAX would be even closer.
I'm jealous of that. Good for you. Enjoy. Yeah, that's perfect.
You got it. You nailed it, my friend. Nailed it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I wanted to... Well, Brian, this is the exciting presets because, to me, they don't make the colors go crazy. Remember, the G3 is in its most accurate Filmmaker still, right? Whereas the other three TVs are in... They're vivid on the Sony. Sony's in vivid, surprisingly. So for Sony to match the active of the S95D in Filmmaker mode or Cinema Home of the G4, Sony in vivid gets you there. Now, if we want to go a little bit crazier, we can go even brighter.
Ironic. Well, Fomo, while you're right there, though, ironically enough, next to the squirrel, there's more shadow detail on the S95D in vivid.
That's because my exposure. Let me turn down exposure so you can see. They all have pretty good shadow detail. It's just so bright. There.
But you can see this different signature.
Now, vivid's too crazy. Let's go standard, and I'll give it a slight warmth. This is standard on the G4 now. Okay.
I need that G4, baby. Need that G4.
I still like the detail. The brightness overdoes it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, vivid's too much. I mean, the standard's a little different.
This is standard.
You know what's funny? Yeah. One of them has, I don't know if the G4, but one of their power saving modes is crazy bright. I think it's the G4. Like, its eco mode looks just like standard.
Right. So the G4 is now in standard mode. The Sony is in vivid mode. And the Samsung is in Filmmaker active, and the G3 is in its accurate mode. So you guys have context. And as you guys all saw, G3 and G4 are identical in Filmmaker mode. Let me find a scene that might take advantage of this extra pop.
Mitchell, don't stress, man. Don't stress. 85 inches, it's a great size. Enjoy the process, my friend. As far as your seating distance and the TV you're picking for a home theater, you're going to be having a blast. So enjoy it. Stop stressing on it.
I think so.
At least the TV part of it. I mean, the rest of it's very stressful.
Hey, what do you think? What would happen to skin tones though in these presets? So
It will be interesting.
let's go to the skin tone real quick, because watching animals, what do animals really look like, right? But we know what people look like. So let's see all 9 of the ladies. See what happens.
Hey, ladies, get funky.
Okay,
Look at the whites on that G4, baby. White! Woo! Not the skin tones, the
that's standard mode,
actual
right?
screen behind them. Now, if you put the G3 into that mode, is it equally as bright? Even calibrated,
Oh,
you think?
1 second. Yes, I can make the G3 equally bright. The G3 is in its filmmaker mode.
Yeah.
Okay,
What's
so
so
let's
fun?
see.
What's so funny, guys? When you see these QD OLEDs, right, Fomo, next to a WRGB OLED, the QD OLEDs look white, and the WRGB OLED looks blue, right? So that's how white the G series is.
Let me see here. Okay, let's go into movies and streaming next, Brian.
Okay.
We're going to compare Dolby Vision. Oh, actually, I have a very exciting comparison today. So the G4 has Dolby Vision Filmmaker mode. So many of you, let's answer that Dolby Vision question. I forgot where it was.
It was Dolby Vision. Yeah, they wanted a TV with both Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, and I think Hisense.
Okay,
I'm not sure if TCL has it, but I know Hisense has all three.
yeah. TCL offers both, I think, as well. But let's address this whole Dolby Vision thing, because we're going to test it today, so you guys can see for yourself. Does Dolby Vision make a difference, right? So we're going to watch Netflix with Dolby Vision native to the G4 against HDR10 on the G3. So it's apples to apples almost. And you'll see HDR10 Netflix, same content on the Samsung and on the Sony, so that you can tell that, wow, these look a certain way, and then on the G4 it looks a certain way. And how different is it? And do you need Dolby Vision? Because I think that's important for people to understand, because there's this voodoo power that Dolby Vision has, which I think is ridiculous, but that's what it is, right? So to answer your question, do not choose a Hisense and a TCL because of Dolby Vision. It's pointless. I mean, I'll just spoiler right there. And this is why it's pointless. Not because Dolby Vision is bad. Actually, that's not the case at all. It's because Hisense and TCL don't necessarily do Dolby Vision right. So you're getting Dolby Vision, but if it's inaccurate, what's the point, right? Just watch HDR10, because at least you have control over your settings to change it, this and there and that. Both Sony and Hisense have had problems getting Dolby Vision correct. And A95K
Same with
was the best out of the box. Go ahead.
same with HDR10 Plus too, FOMO. I noticed that when it came to Hisense, when I was streaming on Prime, my settings disappeared, and I realized there was no indicator saying I was an HDR10 Plus, but I realized, oh, I'm an HDR10 Plus. That's why I'm losing the ability to go with dynamic tone mapping. You lose a lot. That's why I don't like either one, because you lose your flexibility, FOMO, no doubt.
Agreed. And let's plug in. Let's watch some movies real quick.
Is the G4 hype toned down after this live stream? I don't see why it would be.
Well, let me answer that, because you're looking at the 144 hertz 83 inch. So, Getty, if you're in the market for a large TV, a large OLED, the G4 is so much better than a non-MLA. And you saw it with the G3, right? When it got MLA, everything changes. The question is, at the 65, 55, 77, is there still hype if you don't need 144 hertz gaming? What about that, Brian?
I mean, again, that's going to come down to the processor. If the processor does what I was shown it can do at headquarters, then it is worth it. But if it does nothing, then no, it's not.
And that's what I'm going to try to test that. But honestly, I don't know. I couldn't get it to work, unfortunately. You see my 100-hour break-in? It's like 100 hours of action movies that are super bright. So
That's
the
all.
TVs are broken in, and let's do the OLED comparison real quick.
All right, guys, we got 503 in the chat. Please hit like for us. Appreciate it.
Oh, wow. So this is okay. This is amazing. I'm gonna have to show you guys this. I did not expect this at all because I haven't seen all the TVs showing this off until now.
Are we
Okay,
back in Filmmaker and everything? Or are we still with, at a
we. Oh, thank you for the reminder. So first of all, let's take
like
this.
look, it's crazy.
Oh, look, it's crazy, right? It's crazy
That
awesome.
G3
Okay,
is getting killed.
okay. So the G3 is in Filmmaker. The Sony is in Vivid. The Samsung is in Active in
Standard.
Filmmaker, and the G4 is in Standard. So as you can see, just so you guys know, Standard, it's super bright, but what does it do? All the colors are gone, right? Because it's exchanging brightness for color luminance. So let's put the G4 back to its most accurate mode. See, this happens all the time. Oh my God, it sucks. And then where
Yeah,
will I
right.
be?
People clip that out, make a short of it.
There we go. Filmmaker. We're back into Filmmaker. Let's double check the settings that, dynamic tone mapping didn't stick. Okay, everything is off. Expression enhancer is off. Okay, so we're good there. And let's put the Samsung back to its most accurate mode. Well, let's put the Sony back to its most accurate mode. All right. And
Let's
now
not forget,
the
guys, the
Samsung.
A95L is awesome.
Oh,
Excellent TV.
it's still relevant, no doubt about it. Okay. All right. So this is an example why people like QD OLED. So we're still able to say there is more orange in the Sony and in the Samsung. The Samsung and the Sony are almost identical, except there's more orange there. The tone mapping is the same on all four TVs, by the way. Excellent job. You see the detail in that sunlight, except on
Yep.
both the G3 and the G4, you're not getting that color luminance. And so a lot of people ask, hey, is this next generation MLA? Did it fix that? And the answer is not necessarily. Well, and would calibration help? No, it wouldn't, because the G3 is calibrated. There's a touch more orange on the G3, but in the very center of that brightness, it's white on the G3 and on the G4, whereas on the Sony and the S95D, there's a bit more of that yellow in there. And that's very subtle, and look how fast this scene is, right? So if I play the scene through, like, you're going to notice, oh, it's the sun. You're not going to say, oh, look at that brightness right there, right? So if you let the scene play again, you'll see that, is it a big deal to you? You're still getting the brightness.
What are we watching? Are we watching Caveman?
This is alpha. Yeah,
Oh,
it
you
is
went.
caveman.
You
It is
went and
about the
got them.
caveman. That's right. You got it. You
This
nailed it, man.
I wish I could tell you the story behind this movie, but I can tell you this: Alpha's been used for demo material that we had seen, and Fomo and I asked, "Oh, is it a good movie?" Person looks at us, and goes, "It's terrible," but I think it's graded at 4,000 nits, right?
Yep.
But it's so funny. He goes, "It's terrible."
It's terrible.
That
It's
was
a movie
awesome.
for highlights.
But
Uh,
I was waiting
it
for the person to say it's pretty good. They're like, "Nah, it's awful."
Dynamic tone
Yeah.
mapping is off, Darko, but if you want to see it on, I'll let you see. In Filmmaker mode, dynamic tone mapping does something different than in Cinema or Cinema Home. So just so you know, let me see if it does that differently on the G4, because on the G3, it actually raised shadow detail. So dynamic tone mapping is off. If I turn it on, it doesn't do very much in the scene. Yeah, it makes it a little bit brighter. It raises the midtones just a little bit. So this scene could afford to do some dynamic tone mapping to make it even a touch brighter. So for this scene, it raises the midtones up to the spectral highlights. So yeah, Brian, do you watch with dynamic tone mapping on your TVs, or you like
I
to
do.
keep it accurate?
I do. I do. I don't care about the accuracy as much as everybody else here, apparently. I mean, I like dynamic tone mapping on depending on the game as well. Um, Over HGIG, it all depends on the game. But I go, like, say something like Resident Evil 4 looks better with dynamic tone mapping off, and some games look better with it on. So I like LG's dynamic tone mapping in certain places or certain. You are risking it all, huh? That's pretty good.
Hey, you know, as long as I stop it in time, let me make sure it's. There
You
we
are
go.
Circus Soleil, my friend.
I am.
Boy,
That's why you're here to
tight
keep everyone
roping.
company. I.
Hell no.
This is what separates my
I got a better
stream,
chance of
right?
getting pregnant than doing what you're doing. Oh
Okay,
man.
so as you can see, the WOLED, there's a slight sensitivity to the blue on the WOLED, but they actually look nearly identical. But you can tell that QD OLED on top, WOLED on the bottom in this case, because the white points are not properly captured by my camera, and no camera does it when you have two different technologies. But like this scene, they all look great. You know, like G3 and G4, they look the same to me.
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back into we're pausing it and we're splitting hairs. Would you notice that in that 3 seconds of that movie? Probably not.
I mean, look at
And
that,
here thing, but
bright
FOMO for
and
you
punchy.
when you think about the white, when you're seeing it in content, like say that sun that hits, when you're watching that, do you feel like you see the white as impactful when you're not pausing it, or do you actually feel like you lose color when you're watching it in
I
real
don't
time
even.
versus
Okay,
pausing it?
so without a reference monitor, how do I know there's any yellow? You see the issue
Of
with
course.
Spears and Munsell.
So
I call
Marcus,
Stacy. Hey, Stacy, is there yellow? Yes, there's yellow. Okay, now I know. But if you're watching
see
a
it.
movie, it's like
It's like
it's what is it? James Cameron. He completely remastered his '80s movies, and people complaining. Hey, creator's intent. Who's the wiser,
no grain
right?
for you, no grain for you, baby.
So
Gaming tech in the
yeah,
house. What's up, game? What's up, my friend? 5090, baby. Who's buying the 5090? What a great. Your a rewind game is on point, bro.
oh,
My
thank you. I'm
gosh,
gonna do this.
you're getting good.
There
You're
you go.
getting
Here's a
good.
good
Look
one.
at that guy.
I'm trying to nail it for you guys here.
There's a
Okay,
fire.
so Mad Max, right? They all look the same. I mean, they the impact is there. They got the color right, you know. G3 and G4. I mean, after watching this, if you guys are a movie enthusiast, HDR, get the G3. Now, gaming, that's a whole other thing, right? But if you're watching HDR impactful stuff, high quality disc, in this case I have Kaleidoscape, but if you have a disc player, it's going to look just like this. It's going to look amazing. And okay, all right. There is a difference. Let me point it out so that you guys can see. The G4 processing nails it here, Brian. There is lost detail here. It didn't properly tone map it. However, on the G4, nails it just like on the Samsung and on the Sony. So tone mapping is definitely better on the G4. But I had to pause to notice it. And let me turn the exposure down a bit more so you guys can notice that. Hopefully you guys see that. So there's a bit more shadow detail there on the G4 than the G3, but that's what you're paying for. So Brian, and this is what you're saying, that's the slight improvement, right? In the processor, in the tone mapping algorithm. For
Yes.
$1,000 more, is that worth it to you? Because everything else looks great, but that loss right there.
For me, it is. I mean, again, if it's value based, of course it's not. But if it is, what's up, KG? But if you want that extra oomph, it is worth it. If we're going in that, my point is, it's hard to be in this enthusiast conversation if you're not going to chase that little bit, right?
Yep.
So like last year with Sony XR Clear, we beat that drum because we saw a difference. Would the average person see it? Probably not, but we thought it was much worth the A95L over the A95K for that reason. The G4 is the same in my opinion. Gaming Tech, what's up, man? Let's get you a 5090 and a G4, baby.
Wait,
KG, what's up, baby?
what is that white speck on the top left of the Sony? Okay,
It's a
this is what
light.
we're talking
It's a
about.
light.
It is the reflection. Yay! So you notice that same spec is also on the Samsung, but you cannot see it. Why? Well, anti-reflection layer. That's it.
Throw it in the bin,
So,
FOMO. Throw it in the
yep,
bin.
this, my friend, is from the light that is up there. However, here, you don't see it. And this is why Samsung did what they did. It doesn't mean that's why you buy the Samsung, but at least you see it happening. And that same spec would be on the G3 and the G4 because they're glossy, right?
Yeah.
And excellent. So Jamie, you totally segue into our anti-glare discussion because now here's a scene. Is it distracting to you, Brian? Is that anti-glare? I mean, is that spec distracting? I don't think, I didn't even notice it. Like you didn't even notice it half the time.
I mean, I'm used to it, but it's when what's so funny is we're actually pointing out, instead of pointing out the distraction FOMO, we're having to point out that it's not there, which shows you how used to it that we are, right? We're like, I didn't even
Yep.
notice my own face in the screen. But I think it's impressive. I think the technology is very, very impressive. Now, what's funny, since we have KG in the chat, KG and I were at Samsung together. I know we can finally say this. We couldn't say it before. But there was one shot where we paused the star field where we did see the anti-reflection raise the blacks a little bit in the star field. So that we did notice that the KG and I both paused it and saw it. I filmed it, but it was way too bloomed out because of the camera to be responsible to release it. But other than that, I like the film on it. It does do a great job for what these guys are talking about.
Yep.
Just
New and
can't
old.
put it in something.
He's sitting 6 feet from 77-inch. Will that bother you with the coating?
No.
I don't think so. 6 feet is not close enough to see that
your face
issue.
has to be up against it. Like FOMO said, this is where matte monitors bother me. So think if your nose is to the screen, I think you'd have a hard time with it. But I think 7 feet, 6 feet, you'll be okay.
Okay, see that light? It looks like it's part of the movie now.
You're like, it's missing on the S95. Throw that thing out. It's
See,
got missing lights.
It has that diffuse. You guys saw the diffused yellow on the S95. On the Sony, it's part of the movie. So right?
Go back and call Samsung and tell them, like, yo, man, I'm missing reflections on my TV. What's going on? Keanu's got to edge up that beard, man. I hate how he
I
leaves
know,
that
right?
jaw line. Edge up that beard, bro. Man.
Let's go into the dark scenes. This is where it's going to bother a lot of people, I think.
You know what?
So you see the reflection,
with Dune,
right?
If you go into Dune, do you feel that the S95D makes things a little grainier? Do you feel like the coating makes it a little grainier?
No.
That's one thing.
They all look grainy. I mean, it's just Dune is grainy. It's
grainy.
Okay, so you see how you can't tell if it's a reflection or it's part of the movie. I mean, look at the scene, Brian. Right? Is it moving? Right?
It's a
It looks like it's part of the movie, right?
FOMO's lights make it famous.
Look. Is it part of the movie?
Oh,
I mean,
God.
right? This is why we're doing this. This not on the Samsung, right? There's a slight flare, but on the Sony, you see it. Let's have that scene again one more time. I love that scene because it looks like it's moving. Look at that right there.
Is somebody back you swinging the lights behind you? The kids are hanging off the chandeliers.
And this is why now we're used to it. It's not a distraction. This is what we're talking about: is if those reflections are a distraction, is that a distraction or is that slightly diffuse yellow a distraction? Right? You know, there's no winning here.
No.
1917. This is like the ultimate. Oh wait, I'm gonna have to turn up the exposure. So I'm going to turn off the lights after this scene so you guys can get a darkroom experience with these TVs. Okay.
That actually looks like reflections on the screen. So you can see the carpet. You got some checkerboard carpet on your floor.
Yes.
It looks like it's the carpet from The Shining. You know what I'm talking about?
So guys, you see that checkerboard carpet that's on the LG? The Samsung will not have that.
Overlook hotel carpet on your floor. Oh, so here, that's great. So if you look at the S95D, that's where it's annoying. It's like the movie The Fog. You're like, whoa. So that's where it's a detriment.
Now I'm going to turn down to kind of like the exposure that I see. And I think this is about right. This is about the exposure. So the carpet is not as noticeable. I mean, it is noticeable. So it's a combination of, okay, so S95D looks kind of like that. And on the G3 and G4, because my camera does not have the dynamic range, it actually looks more like that, right? So which is more distracting, Brian? Having the lights above or the carpets below?
Well, what's funny about the carpets below almost looks like banding. So I'd have to say I would not like that. I don't know.
It looks like he has a light shining on his face now.
It just looks like, yeah, it's either, well, I mean, the reflections are actually perfect on the A95L. You can really see it perfect.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a mirror you have there.
And the G3 to G4 will look exactly the same, guys. And
So
just as an example,
your hair.
I can block out the reflection by doing this. See that? This is
so
right. So now you only have the light inside, but I just blocked out the rest of the room. Light control, right? You see that?
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn off the lights next, but I just had to show, like, these are the dark scenes that people complain about. And, you know, that's just what it is. G4 over S95D in this scene. And it's unfair to the S95D because the G4, you're not seeing that reflection. Look at the Sony. The G4 will look just like that Sony. That reflection is how it's going to look on the G4 as well. And so you have to keep that in mind. And this is exactly what they were going for. They just didn't realize it would diffuse across the screen like that.
What's funny, it is funny how we say, well, it was used for this. Well, it works better here. Actually, we used it for that. It's almost like you discover what is better for them, and they're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, that's our job, right? We break things. Let me just turn off this light real quick for you guys.
Yes, I still have my hair. Thank you. New and old.
See, now the lights are off. Light controlled room. I'm going to turn off the light behind me.
Watch your steps.
Show you guys.
Tripping.
I know. I'll be falling my face. I've fallen. I can't get up.
Call the paramedics.
And, oh, that LED is still there. Let me block the LED light. And there we go. Okay. Light controlled room, my friends. So, shadow detail. Notice that the anti-glare doesn't affect the dark room watching experience either. And I have the exposure really high, so if there's any differences, you'll see it, right? And I think it looks fine. So it is indeed all about light control, my friends. And you know what? Since we're here, let's talk. I'm just going to touch, shadow detail, all the good stuff, but movies and streaming. Let's talk about how does it, so we're done with the movies. Let's go into streaming real quick for you guys. And then we'll do motion because I have something to say about the cinematic movement. The last shootout this weekend, it did have the X95L. It was the X95L next to the UX 85-inch from Hisense. But the X95L only came in an 85-inch this weekend. And you can't shoot out an 85-inch against 65 inches. It just doesn't work, right? And OLED. OLED will destroy LCD TVs all day long. Doesn't matter if it's mini LED or not. So this year...
It doesn't matter if it's a prototype or not either. That doesn't change.
This year, the prototype 4,000 nit Sony, allegedly called the XR90. We will have that, the 65-inch, and that will be going against other LCD TVs like the qned from Samsung and
we'll see you next week.
Maybe the UX. Yeah, I'm hoping for sure. Okay, so let's see. Streaming. I think we're done here. Let me check for super chats. I thought the shadow detail was pretty great, though.
Yeah.
But let's revisit this real quick. Is the G4 hype toned down after this live stream? Well, the live stream isn't over yet. We're going to revisit this question. But up to this point, as far as movie watching is concerned, oh, is that me or is that G3 dimming a bit more aggressively? Oh, but it's disappearing before my very eyes. So the G3's dimming algorithm dims very aggressively. Yeah.
Remember last year, right as you started them up, you're like, the dimming is so much. Oh my god, it's off. Remember, it was dimming on camera, and
I
you were saying right
remember.
as it went, you're like, from what I understand, this one isn't going to dim, and it just dimmed.
It just
Whoever
dropped.
thought we'd see, whoever thought we'd see OLEDs this bright, by the way.
I didn't. Honestly, I think this is very bright for OLED. It looks great. I love it.
Yes, I had the X95L versus the A95L, but that was 85 inches versus 77 inches.
Brian, this is a great question, actually. 65 inch, because you might have this quandary. 65-inch G3 value versus 65-inch C4 features. We know the C4 doesn't have MLA. We know the C4,
Yeah,
well, it's just not as bright, but it has
it's
144 hertz,
it's
and you've seen
tough.
it. You've seen both.
I would go for the C4. I like the 144 hertz. I do like the new
Because you're a
UI.
gamer. Because you're a gamer.
Yeah, I do like it. And at that size, the pixel density, it's cleaner. I think the C series has gotten cleaner every year, and the C4 looks pretty bright to me. I'm going to compare the C4 to the G3 at the store, and I think you'll be surprised. It does appear pretty bright. Does it measure bright? I don't know, but it does appear bright to me. So I would go with the C4 actually. And most times, guys, I'll go with the newer TV if I can help it.
Yeah.
I would think, yeah. I mean, G2 definitely. The G3 is tough. Plus, the G3 very tough. 65 inches is not great screen uniformity a lot of times, right, Fomo? What does yours have? Pink tint? Your G3
My
has pink tints?
G3 has terrible
Or is it your,
vertical. It has magenta tint on the sides. It's very obvious on a gray screen.
yeah. So
And
and
in
it's
that,
hard for me to
yeah,
recommend.
you see it. Yeah.
65 G3 was something we didn't recommend a lot, and I would say definitely not. Yeah,
And the O has a
C4 and
great,
65 I would, yeah.
yeah. Now, I would choose the G3 because I appreciate the MLA brightness. I watch a lot of movies. I need the HDR impact. For me,
Whatever.
gaming at 120 is all the same. I don't need 144. But then I prefer console gaming to PC gaming. I'm done with that. So
That's
144 is like not
We got your
something
Switch. You got your Nintendo Switch in your pocket. What are you
PS5 is all
docking
I
it?
need. Maybe PS5 Pro. Is the Hey, oh, thanks for the super chat. Is the 97-inch G4 getting the new processor? I don't know. We'll have to ask Rob. It should. It just doesn't have the MLA. And will Pixel Boost push it over 1,000 nits? It's not even the Pixel Boost. It's whether it has the power board to handle 1,000 nits. So I don't know. We just someone's got to have to test it. I can't even predict that. But good question. It's just someone's going to have to buy and test it. Not me. Carlos, thank you for that super chat. I'm in the market for a large OLED. Is getting the G4 at 83 inches worth it even without MLA? The G4 at 83 inches has MLA. C4 does not. Do I wait for the next year to see if so? Good news, Carlos. The G4 has MLA at the 83-inch size. Go for it.
G3 does not, and the G3
G3 does
we
not.
don't recommend G3 at 83.
Yeah.
Because of the power supply anyway.
And RB, running back B, has a super chat. G4 AI upscaling for low bitrate content. Can it match or beat the A95L's XR clear performance? Thank you, gents. We're gonna have to test that, RB. That one is something that we cannot do in this stream, mostly because I have to dive into low bitrate content, YouTube TV in particular. So we won't be able to test in this stream, but we'll find out shortly in the next few weeks. We'll probably do it at Valley Electronics. I think we'll have time for that. I'll make sure to get some low bitrate YouTube TV content with Robert. But tune in next week.
Yeah, I didn't say the G3 was that bad. These guys take my words and run with them. Never even say the G3.
Run with them.
The G3 at 65 had bad screen uniformity.
Yes, it did.
Eddie.
Okay, so streaming. Let's turn up the volume on streaming real quick here. The G3 is a great TV. I mean, I'm seeing it again. I'm like, you know what? Other than slightly worse and slightly with a capital S, slightly worse tone mapping on the brightest content, I don't have a problem recommending it. If you don't notice uniformity issue, because the pricing will be very compelling in the next few months. So we're on Chromecast right now, and we're gonna do a little Netflix action for you guys here. So Netflix is HDR10, not Dolby Vision, right? So let's start with The Witcher. Okay. And And I'm going to pause in this critical spot. There we go. Actually, you know what? I think I missed it. Let's try this again. Do you watch The Witcher, Brian? Are you a fan?
No, heck no. Oh, I watched the first couple seasons, then I was done with it.
And then you got old.
Henry Cavill. G4 looks good, baby.
All right, let's compare.
They all look good. It's terrible. They all look great.
Doesn't it? Let me see the
QDOLEDs just look warmer.
Yeah, they all look. So and the HDR on Witcher is actually pretty phenomenal. So I wouldn't buy the G4 just based on this. I'd get the G3 or the cheapest of this group. And the S95D guaranteed will be the cheapest of this group by September because Samsung is very aggressive in dropping its prices.
I wish they had 83, man. Oh.
I know. Here's a great scene. All right.
And they all look good, man.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny that orange on the QD-OLEDs isn't as impactful as it was on the Skybox.
Mm-hmm. The colors look very similar. They are, as we saw.
Yes, Carlos.
Very accurate. Let's turn up. Let's check out the shadow detail real quick here, to see if we're missing anything. Shadow detail looks identical to me. I'm looking at the shadow detail and all of it looks really good. Black levels are the same. Many people were concerned in a dark room with bright parts of the screen raise the blacks on the S95D. Well, I'm overexposing, and the answer is no. I think it looks great.
Yeah.
I couldn't choose a TV just based on Witcher. So if you guys, that's just why I tell you guys, if you're streaming, these 4 TVs, the best. Choose the cheaper one that fits.
Yep.
Whether you like Tizen, price, it comes with a stand. G3 does not come with a stand. The G4 does, right? So those are things that you guys might want to consider.
I did not know how passionate the backlit remote community is. You guys are really into that.
Yeah, the G4 remote, not impressive. Now,
it's a shame because the Z series remote is awesome. The silver, and it's backlit. Just pass it down.
Brian, are you ready for Dolby Vision versus HDR?
Born ready, baby.
Let's do it. Okay, before we jump into Dolby Vision versus HDR, which we will, trust me, I'm going to stop it right here. Okay. And on the G4, Brian, what is your thoughts on Dolby Vision? I should have asked you.
I mean, I don't mind Dolby Vision. I think it's fine. I just wouldn't choose a TV based on it anymore. If I was, it'd be in the best Dolby Vision implementation, which is LG at the moment. But I wouldn't chase Dolby Vision specifically. If I wanted a Samsung like the 900D or the S95D, I wouldn't not buy it because of Dolby Vision. So to your point, though, on the same with Hisense and them having poor Dolby Vision, I'd rather not have it at all. I would disable it. But LG has the best implementation. I like it, but it's not a necessary thing for me. You?
And what about the magic pointer? I hate the magic pointer, by the way. It's like I'm trying to control Netflix, and the pointer keeps on popping up and screwing everything up. So I'm sorry. I'm not a fan.
When you're also when you're filming and you have the freaking remote in your hand, it shows up on screen. And when you're trying to, what's so funny too is LG can remotes turn on Hisense TVs and vice versa. So you're trying to do a comparison, and the freaking thing, it's a nightmare. You can make it massive too. You ever turn the thing up? It's like a cone, traffic cone.
Right. I love this question. Wait, are these OLEDs? Yes, they are. Top left-hand corner is S95D.
We're doing mini LED time.
3rd generation QD OLED, A95L 2nd gen QD OLED, and the G4 is the latest MLA for 2024, and the G3 is last year's 1st generation MLA. The G4 separates itself, better processing. All right, let's do a quick Dolby Vision comparison, and I'm going to pause in certain scenes to see how good my timing is. All right. Boom, boom. Oh, just
That's
missed
when
it.
you know. That's when you know the scene by heart.
Ah, I am so
Dude,
like
I see these in my sleep. By the way, I have tulips and all kinds of stuff in my mind.
tulips.
Tulips and squirrels. Squirrel.
Here you go. Oh, the delay on
Are you
this
doing
thing
them
is
all? Are you
killing
doing
me.
all them separately?
Yeah. So if you notice, look,
Oh my god! You're not even
this
using a
is
splitter.
this is HDR10 and this
Oh, you
is
got
Dolby Vision.
skills.
You see it? Look, it says Dolby Vision.
Oh, you got skills. You're doing them separately. That's old school, baby. Get that Blackbird out the closet.
All right. So let me make sure you guys see that it's Dolby Vision. See that? Bottom left, Dolby Vision. Top is HDR. All right. So let's try this again. I don't know. All right. So we're going to go into the next scene. I think the next scene might work a little bit better. But because the next scene has some of the specular highlights with shadow detail, you guys can see for yourself the differences. Oh, nailed it. All right. So G4, Dolby Vision, and the other three are HDR10. Specular highlights, identical. I mean, one is not brighter than the other. You would not choose a G4 just because it has Dolby Vision. The A95L is you're watching HDR10. There's no Dolby Vision on the A95L. S95D, same feed, and the G3, same feed. So, but all three TVs, G3, A95L, S95D, is receiving Netflix HDR10 feed from my Chromecast. I turned off Dolby Vision. The G4 internal app is getting Dolby Vision directly. And I'll turn up the exposure a bit so you guys see more detail, but the reality is, come on. There, there is no difference here, guys. Brian, do you see a difference?
Not really.
Not really. All right, so, the colors all look very similar. And let's go with shadow detail, right? Oh, maybe the shadow detail is better. So let's turn up the exposure. And the answer is no. They're graded nearly identical. Look at the G3 and the G4. That's really apples to apples, right? The G4 is uncalibrated. The G3 is calibrated. So any slight color differences, I'm sure the G4 is calibrated. It will address that. But look at the luminous differences. There are none. The shadow detail is the same as the Samsung and the Sony. So for those of you who are all broken up over getting Dolby Vision, I don't know why. It's these scenes, and just throw any scene out there, right? It all looks the same. And so to me, Dolby Vision is costing more because Sony has to spend so much resources to get it right when HDR10 looks exactly the same. It's not brighter, it's not less bright, it's just the same. So what are your thoughts on this, Brian?
Well, it's better. What's better that it's not darker. I think that was the issue with Dolby Vision, is it being too dark. So they all handle it the same. That's good.
The Sony Dolby Vision would have been too dark, and this is why they're fixing it. Or in the A95L, I think it's too light, it's too bright. They're unable to get it right. I agree. DV does not matter anymore because the TVs are so good. In the early days of
true.
HDR, 2017, absolutely. Today, the TVs are doing a better job. Am I playing with fire because I'm showing Netflix, or am I playing with fire because it's fire? I'm trying to... But you guys know my stream, right? I'm always playing with fire, so... All right, let's see, super chats. Hey, thank you, Big C Dub, for the super chat. Just showing love to the channel, guys. Thank you for the love. Already using my 55-inch G4 for gaming on my 3090. Congrats. It replaced my beloved 48-inch C1. Still prefer my A95L for movies on the Panasonic UB820 4K Ultra Blu-ray. All excellent choices. Good work. Thank you. Thank you for your support,
Good to see you,
my friend.
Good to see you.
Now, I think we put the Dolby Vision thing to bed, and this is why I use Netflix. Netflix is the #1 streaming platform. I know that Disney has converted, quote unquote, everything to Dolby Vision. All it is a filter, or Apple, right? Apple TV, everything's in Dolby Vision. Again, it's a static filter. It's so that you guys will buy their products. It has nothing to do with
So
image quality.
you're
People want a
saying
checkbox,
Columbo's not in
Brian.
Dolby Vision?
Right?
Oh my damn, Columbo Dolby Vision. Wow.
I want
The
Colombo and Dolby
Simpsons is
Vision.
in Dolby Vision? Fantastic.
Did the LG processing this year get caught up to Sony's? The tone mapping is better than Sony, actually. Sony above 2000 nits can't do it. So tone mapping, it's better. It's been better since last year. The G3 has better tone mapping than the Sony. In bright content, the G4 definitely is a match for the S95D. I consider G4, G3, and S95D excellent tone mapping. Now, at the brighter content, G4 and S95D is the best. In dark but bright without horses in the snow, the G3 actually did better than the G4. So G4 is a step forward for sure in tone mapping, but the S95D is not far behind. Sony, it was designed, this A95L was not designed for 2000 nit content or even 1500 nit content. But movies like The Witcher, right? It's okay. Doesn't matter. Looks great anyway. So for most people, it doesn't matter that Sony doesn't tone map that well above 1000 nits.
Not now, anyway.
Not now, yeah.
Until next
And
year.
KG loves the tone mapping. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. I think it's very clean.
All right, now let's do that cinematic movement. I really want to try that. Brian, what are your thoughts on cinematic movement?
Let's see. Let's check it out.
Let's see. So let me turn down the exposure a bit so you guys don't get blinded.
Blinded by the light.
Army of the Dead. And I'm going to keep the G4 on its internal app just so you guys can see that everything it seems to do, it might do better on the internal app with its AI processing. So let me make sure I turn that on. Oop, wrong one.
I can do better.
There you go. Oops, here we go. Where's my Army of the Dead? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Blinded by the light.
Who's in the lead, Brian, for your TV of the year so far? You've seen most of them.
G4.
G4?
G4. Yeah. G4, baby. It's the one I was most impressed with. Then probably C4, very impressed with. 900D, awesome. AK Gaming, awesome.
I just wanted to point
Upscaling
this out.
900D, awesome.
AI Picture Pro says this feature is not supported on copy protected content, which is very confusing because I thought AI directorial or AI director processing does do copy protected content. So we're going to reach out to LG and ask them, wait, what happened
I already did.
to AI director?
So I already did. Yeah.
What did
So
they
I
say?
should have an answer in the next. Well, I haven't had an answer
Perfect.
yet, but I put it out to a couple different contacts.
So yeah, we'll
because
turn
we were
that
told
on.
specifically at CES that was different than last year. It actually was made a big point of saying it was different, right, Fomo? So
yes,
they said it was very different.
They were very specific. When you're watching streaming content, here it's a native app, it's streaming, and it still says no copy protections, no copyright of content. So True Motion is on, cinematic movement, and I want to compare apples to apples for you guys here, because the G3 also has cinematic movement, but I'm going to put that on something slightly smoother, so that it, actually, you know what, I'm going to put it on no processing at all to see if there is a difference, right? So clarity, we'll turn off all processing. Cinematic movement, so let's turn it off. Let's see if there's a difference. And then as a benchmark, I'm going to have the Samsung. For this image, I know that Samsung can do it well at 5. Like it's butter smooth at 5. So I want to see how far off the cinematic movement is, if it helps at all. And the Sony is in my preferred setting. And I'll show you guys what that is. So shutter, so 5, okay. And the Sony motion settings. I have Cinemotion on high. I like that a lot. And motion flow, I have on 1 to keep soap opera to a minimum. All right. So let me make sure. Okay. And cinematic motion. It is barely better than it being off. So actually, it is slightly better. The containers, Brian, did not move as much on the G4. So I think it does work. The pyramid still is stuttering, but the containers are not stuttering as badly.
Do you know, is it darkening at all, or is it same luminance?
Same luminance. Yeah, it actually is working. The containers is stuttering like crazy on the G3.
Cool, good to know.
Okay, so the question is, how does it compare to the Sony? Because I can only look at 2 TVs at the same time. So G3, G4, with the G3 off, it stutters like crazy, unwatchable for me. With it on, then it works. Now let's see how it compares to Sony's preferred motion setting. There will be some stutter on the Sony.
Fomo, is it Apple bad? What was it saying? You said the Apple thing was making you crazy with the judder. You're like, oh, I got something that's bad.
It's a match for the Sony. Excellent. Wow.
The Sony has. You think the
wow. Okay, so cinematic movement basically is my favorite Sony setting in 1 click. That's the conclusion.
LG, you mean?
The G-Force cinematic movement is my Sony settings with 1 click. Just putting on cinematic movement, you're getting my Sony settings.
That is the name of the video. Stamp it. Put it on the thumbnail. We're done. Have a good night.
Oh, wait.
Just found out it's
no, wait. I forgot to label it. Motion.
Hashtag.
Let me type in cinematic motion.
Yeah, there you go. Get it. Screenshot it, baby.
Isn't that terrible? Now I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to put it on the G3. We're going to reverse it, right? So the G3 will get cinematic motion. I will turn it off on the G4 because I know all you're asking, wait, what if it's off? And awesome. Wait, David is saying, wait, it looks even better than the Sony. So unfortunately,
it's a wrap.
YouTube is not going to capture motion. The motion, you have to capture it in 120 at least, right? You need 120 to capture. And I tried this. YouTube will not, well, first of all, my video capture software will not allow me to capture anything above 30. I try to capture at 60. So this live stream, 30 FPS maxed out. So everything looks like it's stuttering or too smooth, right? So first, you're going to have to listen to my subjective observation. And second, the stuttering doesn't even look like stuttering. I looked on YouTube. Wait, it looks kind of smooth. Right? It all looks great. So listen to what I say and not what you see. This is where the YouTube live stream compression capture just does not happen. It is a mismatch for sure. So I'm going to put the G4 now on, well, with the cinematic motion label correct. I'm going to one more time. And the G3 is on no interpolation at all, no motion setting at all. It's on 0. And the G4 is on cinematic. And this is Army of the Dead. As we all know, this scene is like the worst of the worst. So let's double check. The G3 ugh, damn arrow. I hate that finger. The magic finger really. It's like
you're turning on someone's TV across the street.
Okay, true motion, everything is off. Right? I see the finger again.
It's like Bruce Lee. Don't look at the finger. You miss all that heavenly glory.
All right. Cinematic motion. Okay. Let's do this one more time. I'm doing a native app on the G4 and HDMI Chromecast on the G3. So
Well, Michelle, you can have you can design a 60 FPS streaming software for us, and we'll be all set.
The Sony is slightly smoother. Well, actually, you know what? No, it's the same. Yeah, G3 is a juddering mess. The Sony, I mean, arguably, you could even say that the G4 might be a touch smoother, just a touch, but this is a really bad scene, and it's great at demonstrating who cannot do anti-stutter without introducing soap opera. So let's swap it. Let's give the G3 a love, give it cinematic movement. Highly recommended, by the way. The finger, not so much.
The finger, heavenly glow.
Okay, cinematic movement. Okay.
I'm gonna have to pop out in a couple minutes to order some dinner.
All right, then we will end it shortly. Perfect timing. This is my last one anyway. This is my last test.
Doing that Korean barbecue, baby. Oh.
I gotta love it. All right, turn everything off. All right. Let's see if there's any love.
Efron, wake up, Brian. Now I'm awake, baby. I'm good.
See, that finger messes me up again.
I'm telling you, bro, it's awful. I've even tried to recalibrate it, and you're like, that didn't work at all.
Let's see. How interesting. With it off, it still looks good. I gotta see this again. So
The G4?
the G4. The G3 was a stuttering mess with it off.
So the G4, the G3 needs it. The G4 doesn't need it. So
No.
on its own, it's better.
Yeah, the G3 needs.
See how these streams are? You were just telling people to buy the G3.
Okay, it's
Now,
slightly worse than the Sony.
throw it in the bin.
All right, guys.
Throw it in the bin.
So it's slightly worse than the Sony with it off. So with it off, it's definitely better than the G3 off, but slightly worse than the Sony in my preferred settings. Definitely keep it on the G4 and the G3. Okay, Brian.
Respect.
Now
What
let's
you
go
do
back
when you do
go
these,
ahead.
you go in to solve one problem, and you create 5 more.
Wait, let me give it something that is less controversial.
You're like,
I'm
I'm here to
what
talk
is
about the
this?
matte screen. Hey, the motion is terrible on this other one.
Let me put it back on. There we
Throw
go.
it in the bin.
Throw it in the bin, my
It's
friends.
G5. It's a G5 airplane. What movie for $1? G5.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
swinging at the knees.
Thank you for the super chat, Getty. All four are looking great, expecting the G4 to kill it, but so far not impressed, especially against the G3. We're not gaming today, that's why, but we will have some closing thoughts, so hold that thought, Getty. Thank you for the super chat. Mohawk Vader, formerly known as Friendless in the Philippines. I'm never going to forget that name. Some reviews
change your
say
name, bro.
Dolby Vision
Friendless in the
on
Philippines is
4K
better.
discs has better color. Newly released King Kong, 1976, 10% better than compared to HDR10 on calibrated TV. You see the problem, Mohawk? I don't disagree with you. It is not our job to hunt down these Dolby Vision grading. I mean, it's either standardized or it's not. So it's quite possible, and you're probably right, that certain versions of Dolby Vision are better than the other, but the number one source of content is streaming. So if you're streaming mostly, don't worry about Dolby Vision until they do something special. And if you're getting a release, so first, it has to be an LG, right? LG, Dolby Vision, spot on. If you have a Sony or any other brand, it's pointless. So, and you have to calibrate that LG Dolby Vision to make sure you're getting the calibrated version right. And then you have to count on one hand how many movies are properly done in Dolby Vision and that you enjoy the movie. So if you're a King Kong fan, awesome. If you're not, you're like, oh my god, I gotta watch King Kong again. Just don't put the cart before the horse, right?
Yeah, man.
Watch the
Stop
movies
watching
you
Greatest Showman.
enjoy.
That movie's terrible.
I,
I'm
oh,
just kidding. I'm
so
sure it's fine, but I've never
and
seen it.
it's like I watch Spears and Munsell for review purposes, but I'm not gonna watch it all day long in my spare
No,
time.
man, we already have. We
Perfect Dolby
have watched
Vision.
it all day long. We can lip sync it.
Now, Brian, I think we can talk about this. So I'll have you start, Brian. G4, the hype is there. How close to the hype is this? Now, I know we didn't test AI processor director, the AI director, because I have copyright content. It said no copyright content can be used. We were told it would be, so we're going to resolve that and find out how do we get it to turn on with copyright content. But we did get to test cinematic movement. Brian, your initial thoughts on just movies and streaming. We're not going to talk about gaming because I think that is definitely a dedicated video.
I mean, I still think the G4 is cleaner, and I do think it's brighter than we can see here. I mean, at
Hmm.
least through YouTube, I feel it's
It
very
is brighter.
impactful. I think the C4 is brighter. So for me, again, and I don't think the S95D and the A95L are close either when I get them out of those presets. I know you showed it with the camera. It's a lot brighter. QD OLED third generation's a lot better. So we do split hairs here, but it's funny. We split hairs when it's advantageous to one or the other. Are we splitting hairs or are we not? To me, the G4 is still hype, is still real. I've seen them all in person many, many times, and I do think it's a big difference. So, but
You bring up a
Efron,
really
you're
good
watching a
point.
stream. I've seen him in person. That's the difference. So to me,
Yeah.
it is a big difference.
And you're absolutely right,
So,
Brian. It's a vivid mode is brighter on the G4.
yeah, which
That
no
for
one
those
watches
who
in
are
the
wondering,
vivid mode.
the vivid
And we
and this is
hate
for
that.
sports. This is for sports watching, right? In vivid mode, you watch sports in vivid, the G4 is brighter. End of story. Like wow, it
Which,
is. It
you know
actually
what's
it's pretty
funny?
bright.
Last year when I saw the G3 and the C3, everyone's like, it's not that big a difference. And then you see them in even a store, there was a massive difference. It's just
Yeah.
that when you put them in most accurate modes, I mean, we are looking at it through a stream. I do feel the G4 is an absolute beast. It just is. To me, it is anyway. It is, and as KG says, it's a big upgrade. The C4 was a big upgrade.
It's
Now, where I
slightly
don't think
brighter than the S95D. I think we
yes,
could
I don't
argue
think the
slightly.
S90D and the S90C is a big upgrade. I think the S95D and the S95C is a big upgrade. So it always changes. Jennifer Gala in the house. What's up, Jen?
Hey, just in time to
Jen
catch our
jumping in.
goodbyes. Now,
Jen
my
jumping right
thoughts,
in the end.
my closing thoughts on this is the G4 better tone mapping than the G3. That is due to the new processor for sure. A little bit brighter, but not worth the premium if you're just going for brightness. It's so close, but it is a little bit brighter. Cinematic movement works well without any motion interpolation on, just everything off. It does look better than the G3. Cinematic movement, when you click on that, it is identical, nearly identical to my Sony in its preferred motion setting, which is great. One click, you're there. And to me, that's a win because it's so hard for me to say, well, this is what I do with my Sony. It's like 4 different settings you got to play with, right? On the G4, I just say cinematic movement, you're done. And compared to the
That's funny.
S95D, oh, look
You're
at that.
so funny.
I could play a game right
Nobody,
now. And
FOMO.
the
Nobody
S95D
came in
doesn't,
here. Nobody came in here looking for the movement. And FOMO's like, by the way,
by the
movement
way,
is on point. Cut it. We're good.
oh, it's an S95D anti-glare. It is what it is. You guys saw the samples. I mean, go back and look at it. Either it works in your home or it doesn't. In a dark room, I don't think it affects it. It doesn't detrimentally affect the image quality. I do like QD OLED for its extra color luminance, but the G4 as a gaming machine at 144 hertz, working well. For gamers, I think the G4 with a 5-year warranty nails it. For the S95D, it's an easy Tizen versus WebOS, depending whether you want WebOS or Tizen. But Dolby Vision is a non-issue, in my opinion. So, yeah. All right. Everyone, thank you
Well,
so much
dude,
for coming by.
excellent job, FOMO. Excellent job. It is hard to get all these TVs going. Please hit like for my
Oh, wait,
boy.
Brian. Is $10 enough for you to get a Korean barbecue? I'll make sure to take you out and when I get some Valuetronics.
Ooh, I can get 4 of them, but I appreciate that. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Please check out my channel, Brian's Tech Therapy. We have excellent content there. We have a 900D 8K video dropping in a few days. Check me out. And
That's
thank you
right.
guys for being here.
And that's a wrap. And yes, the G4 is the brightest for sports. We just didn't get to see it, but take my word for it. Okay, guys, until next time, my friends,
Take
stop
my word for it.
the FOMO.